They smiled at me across the room as if I were invisible. I paid for the wedding, the venue, the caterers, the dress fittings, even the overpriced signature cocktails they were sipping now. Yet, when the day finally arrived, my seat was nowhere near the candlelit tables, or the dance floor, or the toasts. They sat me in the kitchen, next to the swinging doors, between the servers' trays and the trash cans. And they thought I would sit there quietly and smile. They thought wrong. Before we dive into the story, take a moment and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. This story, my story, is just getting started. I didn't cause a scene. Not then. That's the funny thing about being betrayed by the very people you built your world around. It doesn't shatter you, not right away. It hollows you out first. It leaves you sitting there, a slice of dry cake on your plate, a gold-plated fork in your steady hand, while everyone else laughs and twirls on the dance floor you paid for. I watch them through the glass window of the kitchen door. My son, Daniel, looking dashing in his tailored suit. His new bride, Emily, in a designer gown that cost more than my car. I remembered the day Daniel was born. The way his tiny fingers gripped mine, like I was the whole world. Somewhere along the way, he must have let go. I sat there for a long time, ignored, discarded like a forgotten coat. A server, a young woman no older than Daniel, when he still called me Mama, slid a piece of wedding cake in front of me. Vanilla with raspberry filling. Emily's favorite. I never liked raspberry. Daniel knew that once. I stared at the cake, the golden fork glinting under the fluorescent kitchen lights. My hands were steady. My heart was not. I remembered how Daniel had once begged me for a bakery cake for his 10th birthday. How I'd worked 2 double shifts at the diner just to afford it. How his eyes lit up brighter than the candles on the cake when he saw it. How he hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. That little boy was gone. In his place was a man who didn't even think to save me a chair at his wedding. I didn't cry, not then. I waited. I waited through the dinner courses, through the toasts where my name was never mentioned, through the first dance where Daniel spun his bride across the floor like they were floating on air. I waited until the music reached that perfect, joyful crescendo. And then I stood up, walked straight through the kitchen, straight past the clapping servers, past the bar packed with guests, and out the side door into the cool, still night. The air outside was sharp, almost humming in its silence. I pulled out my phone and made 3 calls: the florist, the band, and the venue's bar manager. My voice was calm, polite. Cancellations, immediate. No explanations given, none needed. By the time I walked back into the hotel, the wheels were already in motion. Tomorrow's brunch, gone. The late-night DJ set, pulled. The signature cocktail bar, closed before it opened. They wanted me silent. I gave them silence, but I made sure it screamed. When I got back to my hotel room, the one I had paid for and barely slept in for 2 nights, the faint smell of rose lotion clung to the air, mixing with the metallic tang of anger brewing in my blood. I hadn't shed a tear, but I could feel something inside me hardening, cooling, becoming something stronger than heartbreak, resentment, clarity, purpose. I opened my phone, missed calls, texts, voicemails. Daniel: Mom, why is the brunch canceled? Emily: What's going on? You're being childish. Her mother: This is unprofessional. Guests are asking questions. Childish, petty, dramatic. Words they threw like stones at a woman they thought would never throw them back. I laughed, just a small exhale through my nose. Childish? I balanced checkbooks, shifted shifts, scraped savings to build the life they now danced through so carelessly. If they thought I was petty, they hadn't seen anything yet. I reopened the bank app. Charges I hadn't authorized glared back at me. A spa day for 8, a bar crawl, facials, champagne. Emily, my brand new daughter-in-law, had helped herself to my credit card like a wedding gift registry. I clicked over to my emails. One from the florist, no refund. Fine. One from the band, deposit forfeited. Fine. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it for the woman they thought they could erase. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the stiff hotel bed, watching the sun bleed into the sky in streaks of orange and pink and sickly yellow. A memory stirred. A little red folder buried in the dresser back home. Old paperwork, letters, whispers from a past I had tried too hard to forget. I packed my things, showered off the last traces of perfume and shame, and checked out without a word. The drive home was long and quiet, the kind of quiet that lets ugly truths rise up like bubbles in a stagnant pond. No one defended you. No one noticed. You were never part of their vision. The roses in my front yard were blooming wildly, but I didn't stop to admire them. I went straight to the bedroom, dug into the dresser, and pulled out that red folder. At the bottom, under yellowed insurance forms and brittle photographs, was a letter I had never opened, my late husband's handwriting on the envelope, postmarked the year he left. I remembered finding it weeks after his funeral and being too afraid to open it. It had felt like inviting more pain into a heart already split open. This time, I slid my finger under the flap and unfolded the letter. The truth hit harder than any betrayal at the wedding. Daniel isn't biologically yours. My late husband had known. He had lied. I had spent a lifetime raising another woman's child, loving him with every fiber of my being, only to be discarded like a stranger. The room tilted for a second, then settled. I read the rest of the letter. Apologies, excuses, regrets. None of it mattered. Daniel was the result of an affair. A child dropped at my doorstep as a test I didn't even know I was taking, and I had passed. Every late night, every packed lunch, every scraped knee and whispered bedtime story. I passed, and still they erased me. But now I had something stronger than grief. I had clarity. I didn't cry. What would be the point? Tears had built Daniel's world, paid for his braces, his sneakers, his college applications. They had soaked my pillow when his father left, and again when Daniel crossed that graduation stage, without so much as a glance my way. I had run out of tears years ago. I poured a strong black coffee, sat by the window, and planned. The cancellation of the brunch was just the beginning. That morning, I posted a single, powerful photo on Facebook, the check I had written for the wedding. No caption, no context, just the undeniable proof of sacrifice. The comments exploded. Old friends, distant family, neighbors. They all pieced together the story I refused to explain. By noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Let them sweat. Let them knock. Let them bake under the heat of their own shame. Later, a cheap bouquet of wilted carnations appeared on my porch. No card. I carried it straight to the trash. The silence afterward was loud. No more texts, no more calls, just a strange, stretching quiet, like the eye of a storm that had passed, leaving destruction behind. They didn't know what I would do next. Honestly, neither did I. But whatever it was, it would be mine. When I finally ran into my cousin Diane at the grocery store, she approached with caution. She whispered, "Are you okay?" I looked her dead in the eyes and asked back, "Were you okay sitting there watching me shoved into the kitchen?" She flushed, stammered, "I didn't know. I thought maybe—" "You didn't think," I cut in. "That's the problem." She apologized, a small, pitiful thing. It didn't free me, but it was a start. When I got home, there was one more surprise. Another letter, hidden deep inside that same red folder. No envelope this time, just folded paper, written 3 days before my husband's death. He had confessed even more. Daniel hadn't just been someone else's child. He had been abandoned, left at my husband's door by a terrified teenage girl, unwanted, almost given away. My husband had lied to keep him, and to keep me. Daniel wasn't mine by blood or by marriage. He was mine by choice, by love, by sacrifice. And still, he had chosen to cast me aside. But here's the thing they didn't understand. I wasn't mourning anymore. I wasn't bleeding. I was free. And in that freedom, I left one last note behind at the venue, tucked into the wedding guest book, right where Emily and Daniel would find it when they opened it later. It read simply, "Love isn't about biology, money, or appearances. Love is about showing up, again and again, even when no one sees you. I showed up. You didn't. Congratulations." No anger, no dramatics, just the truth. A truth sharp enough to carve my name into the story they tried to erase me from. And this time, they would never forget it. Weeks passed. The world outside kept turning, but for me, time slowed into a thick, syrupy crawl. The sun rose and set like it was mocking me. Another day where I wasn't needed, wasn't loved, wasn't even remembered. I kept my head down. I didn't post any more cryptic Facebook photos. I didn't answer their desperate, half-hearted messages. I let the silence grow like a living thing between us. Let it bloom dark and wide until they felt it choke them. Meanwhile, whispers started. Emily's family began murmuring about, what kind of man lets his mother be treated that way? The venue staff, still stung by the chaos of the canceled services, talked to the other vendors, who talked to the guests, who talked to the neighbors. Reputation, like fine china, is easy to shatter and impossible to put back together. Daniel and Emily thought their wedding would be a golden memory they could show off for years. Instead, it became a cautionary tale, a story that started with whispered sympathy and curdled into open judgment. They were not the blushing newlyweds anymore. They were the selfish couple who had publicly humiliated the woman who built their lives with her own hands. I wasn't done, though. Not yet. One afternoon, about a month after the wedding, I received an invitation. A baby shower. Emily's sister was pregnant, and Emily, being the shining star of her own universe, was hosting. I stared at the ivory cardstock and the flowery font, the RSVP line neatly asking for my reply. They wanted me to show up, pretend everything was fine, paste on a smile like a bandage over a bullet wound. Instead, I mailed back the card, empty except for a simple handwritten note. "Thank you for reminding me how valuable my absence can be." No explanation, no fight, just a mirror held up to their cruelty, forcing them to look. It was around this time that Daniel started showing up at my door. First once, then again, then a third time, standing in the rain like a lost boy. I didn't open the door. I watched through the peephole as he knocked, then pounded, then finally slid to the floor, his expensive shoes soaked through. It rained harder. He looked smaller than I remembered, smaller than the man I had raised. He didn't stay long. When the letters started coming, real ones, ink bleeding on crumpled paper, I read them, but I didn't respond. Apologies that danced around responsibility, excuses that rang hollow, promises to make it right, without ever understanding how deeply they had broken something that didn't heal with flowers or brunch invitations. It wasn't about being uninvited from a party. It was about being erased from a life I had built, brick by painful brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, only to be treated like I had been an afterthought, an obligation, a burden. No one sees the cracks until the foundation collapses. The final note I left at the venue had done more damage than any shouting match ever could. Quiet, unshakable truth, written in calm pen strokes. It rattled Emily, who lived for image and perception. It rattled Daniel, who began to realize, maybe too late, that loyalty isn't something you can patch up after it's been thrown away. Then came the real twist. It was my lawyer, an old friend from way back when, who suggested it. "You still have rights," he said. "You paid for the wedding. You have contracts. You can sue if you want to." I thought about it, long and hard. I didn't need the money. I didn't even need the victory in court. What I needed, what I deserved, was acknowledgement. So instead of suing, I did something better. I mailed copies of every receipt, every contract, every bank statement to Emily's parents, the ones who had smirked at me during the wedding dinner, clinking champagne glasses without a care. Attached was a simple invoice. Balance due. Respect, gratitude, common decency. Non-payable in cash. Petty? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure the story, they told themselves, about a crazy mother-in-law who made everything about her, didn't survive unchallenged. In small towns, stories are currency. And this one, this brutal little truth, spent fast and wide. Emily's glow dimmed. Daniel's shiny new life became something dull and stained around the edges. People pulled away. Invitations dried up. Opportunities slipped by. All the things they valued so highly. Status, approval, admiration, wilted in the light of what they had done. Meanwhile, I thrived. I started taking pottery classes on Tuesday nights, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had the time for. I joined a local book club that met at a cozy, dim-lit cafe. I went on long, winding drives without anywhere to be, windows down, radio loud. For the first time in decades, my life was mine. Messy, imperfect, unapologetic. Daniel sent one last letter. This one was different, raw, honest in a way that caught in my throat. "Mom," it began, "I thought I knew everything. I thought growing up meant growing away. I didn't realize it meant remembering who taught you how to stand in the first place." He begged for forgiveness, not in a needy, grasping way, in a hollow, humbled way. He spoke of memories, the pancakes I burned at 6 a.m. for his soccer games, the time I stayed up all night sewing a costume for his school play, the long talks on the porch swing when the world felt too big. He remembered. He finally remembered. But memory isn't enough to rebuild trust. Not after it's been torn down. Brick by brick. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back in the drawer where the red folder had lived. I didn't throw it away. I didn't answer it either. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some bonds don't stitch themselves back together with good intentions. Some things, once broken, become something different entirely. Not worse, not better, just different. The final irony is that by erasing me, they forced me to find myself again. Not just Daniel's mom, not just a bank account, or a backup plan, or a shadow clapping from the sidelines. Me, whole and stubborn and gloriously unfinished. And maybe, just maybe, that's the best revenge of all. Months passed. The baby shower came and went. Life went on, or at least pretended to. I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends. How the glow around Daniel and Emily faded. How whispers of what happened at the wedding never really stopped chasing them. No matter how many Instagram perfect pictures Emily posted, no matter how many parties they attended, the cracks showed. You can't fake kindness. You can't post your way out of disrespect. Then, one day in late October, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Later, curled up with a worn novel and a cup of tea, I listened. It was Daniel's voice, but different somehow. Stripped raw, hoarse around the edges, like he hadn't been sleeping much. "Mom," he said, "please. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can. But can I see you? Just once? Please?" I sat there, staring at the wall long after the message ended. Every instinct in me warred against itself. The mother part of me, the part that still remembered the little boy who once ran to me with scraped knees and trembling lips, ached to reach out. But the woman I had become, the one who had learned, painfully, that love without respect is just martyrdom, stayed frozen. Pain changes you. It hardens some parts, softens others. I didn't call him back. Not immediately. I needed to sit with the decision, feel it fully, not rush into it like I used to. For the first time, I put myself first. A week later, standing at the kitchen counter, stirring a pot of soup, I made up my mind. I would meet him, but on my terms. I chose a small diner on the edge of town, one that smelled like bacon grease and fresh coffee, one where the booths had peeling vinyl and the jukebox never quite worked right. Neutral ground, no memories there, no ghosts. I arrived first. The bell above the door jingled 15 minutes later. I looked up, and there he was. Daniel looked older, not just physically, though the sleepless nights had etched faint shadows under his eyes. No, he looked worn in the way only regret can wear a man down. He slid into the booth across from me, fumbling with the napkin dispenser. His hands, once so steady, trembled slightly. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice thick. I nodded, saying nothing, letting the silence do the heavy lifting. He started to speak, then stopped, ran his hand through his hair, laughed bitterly under his breath. "I messed up," he said simply. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic declarations, just 3 words, laid bare between us like an offering. I watched him, really saw him, not the polished groom in a tailored tuxedo, not the self-assured adult who thought he knew better. Just my son, messy, broken, trying. I could have made him beg, could have listed every slight, every moment they made me feel small, could have demanded apologies, not just for the wedding, but for every time they had taken me for granted. But I didn't. Not because I forgave him, not yet, because sometimes the deepest wounds aren't healed by dragging someone over the coals. They're healed by letting the silence show them the cost. Daniel told me about the note, how Emily had found it tucked inside the venue's gift basket, right after the service fell apart. How she had read it out loud, her voice shaking, as vendors started packing up and guests began whispering. "You treated your foundation like wallpaper. Easy to replace, but houses fall without their foundation. Congratulations." He told me how the words haunted her, how they fought that night. Brutal, vicious arguments that ripped apart the pretty fantasy she had built. How he realized, in the wreckage, that a marriage built on image instead of love is as hollow as a house of cards. "She left," he said finally, staring at the salt shaker. "A week ago. Said she needed someone who would move on from all this drama." There it was, the final fallout. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a deep, aching sadness. Dreams don't die with fireworks. They wither slowly, like plants left out in the frost. "I'm sorry," Daniel whispered again, voice breaking. The waitress came by with coffee. I nodded for a refill, giving us both a moment to breathe. I looked at my son, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see the boy I lost or the man who betrayed me. I saw a human being, flawed, flailing, trying. We talked for hours, the sun setting behind the fogged windows, the world outside disappearing, about old memories, about small hopes, about how sometimes forgiveness isn't a door you throw open. It's a tiny crack you pry open, inch by painful inch. I didn't promise to forgive him. I didn't promise anything. But when we finally stood, when he hugged me, tentative and shaking, I hugged him back, not because he deserved it, because I did. Because healing isn't about whether someone earns it. It's about whether you are ready to stop bleeding from a wound they don't even remember giving you. We walked out into the cold night. No promises, no easy fixes, just two broken people trying to stitch something back together. Not into what it was, but maybe into something new, something honest. As I drove home, the radio played some half-forgotten ballad about love and loss. I smiled, a real one, small but true, because even in brokenness, there's beauty, because even after betrayal, there's life, because even after being sat in the kitchen, left out, forgotten, erased, I was still here, still standing, still whole, and no ungrateful child, no shallow bride, no whispered rumor, could ever take that away from me again. The days blurred after that diner meeting. Daniel texted sometimes, short, hesitant messages. Not the kind you send to a mother you've always been close to. No, these were the careful, clumsy offerings of someone who knows he's walking barefoot across glass. Thinking about you, hope you're okay. Made your lasagna recipe tonight. Didn't burn it this time. Miss you. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. Healing isn't linear. Some days I wanted to wrap him up in my arms and pretend none of it had happened. Other days, the old anger flared hot, and I'd throw my phone into a drawer, swallowing the lump in my throat. One cold Saturday in December, a knock sounded at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Opening it, I found Daniel standing there, a potted plant in hand, awkward, hopeful, the kind of gangly peace offering a child might offer after breaking something precious. "It's for you," he said, lifting it sheepishly. Supposed to be really hard to kill. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A real, startled laugh that cracked something brittle inside me. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. It started small after that. Coffee here, a walk there, shared silences that weren't as sharp-edged as before. He didn't push. He didn't ask me to forget. He just showed up, again and again, like he was building a bridge out of tiny, fragile moments, plank by plank. At Christmas, he brought a pie. Store-bought, he admitted sheepishly. But hey, it's the thought, right? We sat by the fire, the tree blinking lazily in the corner, trading old stories. He asked questions he never had before. About my childhood, about dreams I'd buried under years of motherhood. For once, he saw me, not just as mom, the role, but as a person, and little by little, something thawed. One night, after a shared movie and a bowl of burnt popcorn, he asked the question that had been lurking unspoken between us. "Why didn't you fight harder to be at the wedding?" I turned the TV off, letting the darkness settle around us. "Because love," I said slowly, "isn't about begging someone to see your worth. If they can't see it freely, no amount of fighting will make them." He looked down, shame written all over his face. "I see it now," he whispered. Tears prickled at my eyes, but I blinked them back. "Good," I said softly. "But seeing it now doesn't erase the cost. It just means we decide if it's worth building something new." We were quiet for a long time after that. The rebuilding wasn't flashy. There were no big declarations, no movie montage-style scenes of perfect happiness. There were missed calls and awkward pauses, forgotten birthdays and late-night texts, mistakes, apologies, progress measured in inches, not miles. And I was okay with that, because real healing doesn't look like a fairy tale. It looks like two wounded people reaching for each other across a chasm, scared but willing. Around spring, Daniel told me he had started therapy, on his own, not because anyone forced him. I smiled, proud but cautious. "Good," I said simply. He started to talk more about Emily too. How, after she left, he realized he had spent so much of his life chasing approval. Hers, the world's. That he forgot the people who loved him without conditions. "She liked the image of me," he said one night, picking at a scab on his knuckle. "You love the mess of me." I said nothing. Just let the truth of it settle between us. One afternoon, standing in my backyard among the early tulips, Daniel turned to me with a hesitant smile. "There's someone I'd like you to meet," he said. Panic flared for a brief, irrational second. "Not Emily again." But then he added, quickly, "It's not what you think. Just someone who's been helping me see things differently." Her name was Claire. Kind eyes, laugh like warm honey. A social worker who worked with families rebuilding after trauma. She wasn't polished like Emily, wasn't picture perfect, but she listened, really listened. I liked her immediately. Over dinner, she told me quietly how much Daniel had changed, how he talked about me with reverence, like someone talking about finding treasure they thought they'd lost forever. I excused myself to the bathroom halfway through and cried silently against the sink, because somewhere, deep down, a tiny voice whispered, "Maybe this isn't the ending. Maybe this is the beginning." By the time summer rolled around, Daniel and I had built something stronger than before. Not the innocent, dependent bond of childhood. Not the strained, obligatory connection adulthood often forces. Something rawer, realer. One July evening, as fireflies danced outside and the air smelled of cut grass and grilled hamburgers, Daniel handed me a letter. "For you," he said simply. "Read it later." I waited until he left. Sitting on the porch swing, the letter trembling in my hands, I unfolded it carefully. Inside was a simple note, written in his messy, familiar scrawl. "Thank you for teaching me how to stand, even when I tried to make you kneel. Thank you for loving me enough to walk away when I treated you like less. Thank you for being my foundation, even when I didn't deserve a home." Tears blurred the words. I held the letter against my heart, rocking slowly, the swing creaking beneath me. Because sometimes the most beautiful endings aren't tied with neat bows. Sometimes they're stitched together from broken pieces, made stronger at the broken places. Sometimes redemption doesn't roar like thunder. It whispers, it hums, it breathes, and it lives. In a mother's steady heart, in a son's trembling voice, in the soft, tentative reaching across a table cluttered with coffee cups and second chances. I smiled through my tears, whispering into the golden dusk, "I forgive you, not for him, for me, for the woman who smiled in the kitchen when she was betrayed, for the woman who left a note, knowing full well it would be a ripple that changed everything, for the woman who stayed true to herself when the world told her to shrink. I was, and am, proud of her, and I hope wherever you are listening to this story tonight. Whether from a crowded city street, a quiet small town, or a soft patch of countryside, you remember, your worth isn't negotiable. Your kindness isn't weakness. Your boundaries are not cruelty. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't anger, it's peace, it's joy, it's stillness. Thank you so much for listening to this story tonight. If it touched you, if you felt even a flicker of emotion, please take a moment, comment below, and tell me where you're watching from. Share your own story if you feel called to. And don't forget to subscribe for more true, powerful stories that remind us all, even in brokenness, beauty lives. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, stay you.